So hi everyone, welcome to our second session on the Bhagwad Gita. Today we'll be talking about the five Pandavas, the five elements, the flute, and the 100 Kauravas. So before we start, let's do an invocation. Let us sit in a comfortable position, close your eyes, connect the tongue to the palate. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. Let us invoke. To the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, we thank you for your priceless blessings. To Lord Krishna, we humbly invoke for your divine blessings. Thank you for helping us to understand the Holy Scriptures. Thank you for your divine help, protection, mercy, prosperity, understanding. Thank you for your divine love, divine power, and divine guidance. Gently open your eyes and let's go. So welcome to our session. So today's session is on the Bhagwad Gita. We are going to be talking about the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So today's talk was about the flute. So as you can see, there is a picture of a flute here, and we're going to talk about that. As we get into the session, today's session is about the five Pandavas and the five elements. So we've all heard that, that the chakras, the Pandavas, that there are five elements. There's earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So these are the five elements that are commonly talked about. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect the chakras, the Pandavas, the elements, everything, so that the Bhagwad Gita or the Mahabharata, as the case may be, or any other scripture of any other religion begins to come alive for us. Because right now what otherwise happens is that the scripture is not alive. It's just like a story for us. We listen to it 1 year in, 1 year out, and then we don't know what to do with it. So the idea is to bring it into our life. Okay. So as we discussed last week, what is the crux that we are talking about here? We are talking about the first shloka first of the Bhagwad Gita, which we discussed last time. So what does it say? It says, Dhritarashtra Uvacha, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre, Samaveta Yuyutsavaha, Mamukam Pandavascheva, Kim Kurvata, O Sanjayaha. So what that is summarized as is that the blind king Dhritarashtra, who cannot see, is asking his introspection, which is his inability to think for himself. What did my 100 Kauravas, which represent the vices, and my 5 Pandavas, which represent the chakras, which, whose job is to basically to overcome these 100 Kauravas, what did they do today? So he's asking about the progress of the human battle. Okay, moving on. So yeah, so this is basically what we're saying is that assembled on the field of sensory activities, eager for psychological battle, what did they do today? Okay, now, if we go on to the 5 Pandavas, then we see that the 5 Pandavas are basically born off of 2 mothers. One is Madri and the other one is Kunti. So the power was actually given to Kunti, but she decided to share it with Madri. Okay, that's just something to keep in mind. Now, Shahadev and Nakul, which are the earth and the water element, they were born out of Madri, and the fire element, air element, and ether were born out of Kunti. Okay, obviously the father was considered to be Pandu, and we'll go along to discuss the Devas. So the Devas basically, so we have the Ashwini Kumar, the 2 Ashwini Kumars, who basically are the ones who helped give birth or give power, I would say, to Shahadev, who is the earth element. So the earth element, as we can see, a picture here, basically is tenacity. Tenacity is the ability to hold on. So if you see a tree, for example, it's holding on to the earth, right? If the earth is loose, then the tree cannot hold on. Similarly, also when we do the meditation on twin hearts, we see that, we bless the earth. So the earth is really important. Okay. Sometimes, people get this feeling that something material is not good, or, materialism is not good. I don't know about that, because from what I have understood is that the entire solar system The entire solar system is evolving, and part of it has to do with physicality. There has to be some amount of physical element, otherwise what are we evolving? Okay, the next one. So the next one is the Swadhisthana chakra, or the sex chakra, and this is basically governed by Nakul, who is the water element. Now the water element likes attention. So if you have watched any of the series on the Mahabharata, you would have seen that Nakul is someone who's always kind of admiring himself, looking at the mirror. Also, when we're attracted to somebody, it's like a sexual attraction, right? So there is an element of water, there is an element of attention and attraction. Now, the power of attention and attraction translates into the divine power of adherence, which means the ability to connect. So, for example, when a sperm, for example, fertilizes an egg, there is the power of adherence. The sperm enters the egg, enters into it, there is a connection, and that is what gives rise to life. So that is the function of the sex chakra, or of the Ashwini, or of Nakul, who is born of the Ashwini Kumar. Okay, moving on. So this is again a picture of water. So there is the earth, which is the Muladhara chakra. Then we have water, which is the sex chakra. Okay. Then we have Arjuna, which is the fire element. So this is the solar plexus chakra, the Manipur chakra. He is born of Indra, the king of the gods. Now, this particular, chakra is basically the one that controls all the senses in some sense. Because if there is self-control, the self-control comes from the solar plexus chakra. Solar plexus chakra decides whether I'm going to eat more or I'm going to eat less. The solar plexus chakra decides whether I'm going to get angry or I'm going to forgive, right? To some extent. Now, as we grow, obviously this changes, but right now we're talking about, people who are here, you and me. And I think for us, Arjuna is a really important character because it's the fire element. Now, we discussed some of these aspects in our session yesterday, which was the angel session on Devas and Pandavas. If you like some more detail, you can look at that video available also. We won't be repeating too much of that session over here. Okay, moving on. So next we have, so this is Arjun, so as we discussed last time also, Arjun is the fire element, which means it can either burn or it can produce. It can produce light, it can produce heat, it can make our life very comfortable, right? So the solar plexus chakra, if it is handled properly, it can make our life very comfortable. It's also where we get the will to do things. When we want to do something, it is our solar plexus chakra that motivates us to do it. Okay. The next one, Bhim. So Bhim is the heart chakra, and he represents the element of pranayam. And he is born out of Vayu. So if you remember one more important, character in Hindu mythology who is born out of Vayu, yes, Hanuman. So Hanuman also represents, he's the son of Pavan, which basically means air. And air is more fluidic than water. Air is also that can go anywhere, right? It can permeate absolutely anything, unless you of course create a vacuum and a very strong vacuum. Air will enter everything. So the air element or the Bhim element basically it's kind of pervasive. It goes everywhere, and it is the chakra, or it is the person in the Mahabharata who is able to overcome the Kauravas. Okay, so Bhim, the love aspect, Bhim, the heart. So using our heart. Now, one more thing I want to add here is that sometimes the love aspect is not just about being mushy and lovey. Sometimes, the love aspect is also about discipline. If we don't discipline our children, or we don't discipline ourselves first, of course, it's going to be tough, right? So sometimes discipline is love. So let's say, for example, we have a child who is, always beating up people, like beating up whoever they find. Now, out of love, the mother or the father cannot just let them beat up whoever they want, because that's not going to help this child when they're older. It's going to be a disaster. This child is going to be a violent, angry person, right? So from a young age, it is the job of the parents to discipline this child, to control this child's ability. And how can that be done? Through love, through Bhim, through the air angle. Okay, moving on. So the throat chakra is the Vishuddhi chakra. It is the element of ether. and Yudhishthir, who is born of Dharma, who is the presiding deity of all righteousness, which means that when we do something right, it is basically the ether element. Now, for those of us who are coming from a theosophy background, we also are aware of the physical body. Then we know that there is an energy body, which is called the etheric body. Then we know that there is something called the emotional body, which surrounds us. Then we have the mental body. And then beyond that, we have something called the causal body. The causal body is where the karma is stored. Our karma of all lifetimes is stored in the causal body. And it's the causal body that determines what kind of skin I'm going to have, what kind of hair I'm going to have, what kind of clothes I'm going to have, what kind of body shape, what my wealth is going to be, who my family is going to be. All of that is determined by the causal body. And that comes out of an element called ether, because it is not something that we can touch or see. It's just something that's there. Okay. Ether is a very fine, what should I say, almost no matter. I mean, there is matter, but it's like it's a matter that cannot be seen. It's not solid, gas, or liquid. Okay, it's still matter, but it's not solid, it's not liquid, and it's not gas. Okay, so moving on from there. So if we look at all these 5 Pandavas, they have some spiritual tendencies. Okay, and these are the 5 Pandavas who in the Mahabharata, in the Bhagwad Gita, are going to overcome the 100 Kauravas, which are the vices. Whose vices? Believe it or not, our own. Okay, so now we move on to the next one, which is Sanjay gives a response to the blind king Dhritarashtra, and he says, Drishtavatu Pandava Nikam Vyudham Duryodhanastata Acharya Upasangamya Raja Vachanam Aprabit. So what he basically is saying is that after seeing the Pandav army, Duryodhan, who's a little intimidated, goes to the guru of both the Pandavas and the Kauravas, whose name is Dronacharya, and says the following things. What he says, we are going to talk about in the next session, which is also called the 4 Ds. The 4 Ds are Dron, Drupad, Duryodhan, and Drishtadumna. So we'll be talking about that next week. But this is the intro to that. Okay. So what happens is that Duryodhan, which represents the Kauravas, he represents, according to Paramhamsa Yogananada ji, he represents desire for material things. So he sees the Pandav army. The Pandav army basically is the intelligence, born out of pure intelligence. So he's looking at all the chakras and he's saying, what do I do now? And the vices are kind of intimidated because they feel that if the chakras become very strong, or the chakras have decided to wage a war, then what's going to happen? Okay, so the vices are kind of fighting for survival. Okay, so let's talk about the Kauravas for a bit. Okay, now we have these tendencies. So we have the 5 instruments, or what are called telephones of perception. What are these 5 telephones? This is again, telephones is a term that is used by Paramhamsa Yogananada ji. I think what he's basically saying is that, just like we have our phone going off all the time, WhatsApp, Facebook, social media, I don't know, everything except the phone these days. But anyway, basically the point is that telephones basically means like input. It's like coming all the time we are attached to sight, the ability to see, hearing, the ability to hear, smell from our nose, taste from our tongue, and touch. Okay, touch is from the skin. So these 5 instruments, or these telephones of perception, which is the ability to perceive. Now, we don't necessarily always just perceive with our eyes. We have input coming in from all these senses. What happens when all these senses get together with the 5 instruments of action? So we take action with certain parts of our body. There's speech, which is the ability to speak. There is the manual ability, hands and feet. There's hands, there's manual ability. Then there's locomotion, which is the ability to walk. There's procreation, which is the reproduction of another being. And then there is excretion. Excretion is the ability to let go. So these 5 action instruments, and these 5 instruments, 5 plus 5, which is 10, they have 10 propensities each, which combined together creates the 100 Kauravas. Okay. Now, in the book, God talks with Arjuna. This is a list of 80 of the vices, so to say, that Paramhans Ji has talked about. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff here, but I just thought I'll leave it there for reference. You can refer to the book, or if you like, you can take a screenshot. But more than that, I would say the better way to go about it is to do Arhatic yoga. Why? Because, if we read about, if we just go back, just give me a second. Yeah. So if we go back to these 100 Kauravas and we are thinking like, how do I what are you suggesting, Sheetal? Are you saying that I don't talk? Are you saying that I don't listen? Are you saying that I don't see? No, I'm not saying any of these things. I'm basically saying that this is the information that is coming in. There is a way to act, and Arhatic yoga can help us to make our chakras very, very strong, to enable our chakras to fight the Kauravas. Who are the Kauravas? The vices. In a very smooth, in a systematic way. The reason I say systematic is that, sometimes people get confused, like, just what we talked about, like, the love aspect and the discipline aspect. Like, do I not discipline my child because I love my child? Is love and kindness. So suppose you have someone in your life, right? Let's talk about this. So suppose you have someone in your life and, instead of doing their own work or, earning money for themselves, they're dependent on you, or the other way around. Okay, it could be a parent-child or a child-parent, whatever, as the case may be. So what's happening then is that the love aspect in some sense is missing, right? Because we need to make sure that this person becomes independent. Now, how do we do that? And how do we know when we are being unkind and when we are being kind? Okay, so when is disciplining kind and when is disciplining unkind? For this, I'd like to go into, again, apart from the chakras, there is also the element of what we call the flute, right? So today's topic was also about the flute. Now the flute is like, it's a pipe which has, holes in it, and it has one hole on the top, right? So, Krishna basically, Lord Krishna plays the flute. How? By putting his mouth into the top part, and the air flows all the way and it creates sound, right? Now, the holes in the flute represent the chakras, the Pandavas. They are basically the energy centers from which there is input and there is output. Okay, so the chakras are a form of input as well as output. Krishna, or Krishna consciousness, flows through that flute and creates a certain kind of music, right? Now, how many of us are actually willing to just do nothing in some sense and just let God or Krishna play his music through this flute, through my body, through my body? Sometimes the Krishna consciousness may play a sad tune. Sometimes the Krishna consciousness may play a happy tune. Are we ready? Are we willing? Are we really willing to let Krishna, pour energy into our crown chakra, into our system, let the sound come out from our chakras, and whether it's sad or whether it's a happy tune, we are still okay with it. Are we? Are we not? If that is something that we want to be Krishna's flute, then we have to understand Arhatic yoga is one of the options. Okay, I'm not saying there aren't other spiritual schools, but I'm talking about Arhatic yoga because that's what I practice. So Arhatic yoga is a way of making our chakras capable of becoming able to handle whatever tune is being played by Krishna consciousness. Now, who's Krishna consciousness? Our Krishna consciousness, one level. So let's say, for example, we talk about the causal body. That's where all our karma is. Okay, it's not exactly here on top of my head. Okay, I'm just kind of indicating that it's up there somewhere. Now, when that causal body plays a certain tune through my body, am I okay? If my causal body or my Krishna consciousness decides that in this lifetime I'm going to be a very wealthy woman, or in this lifetime I'm going to be a very poor person, am I okay with it? So how do we handle this? The way we handle this is that what we are saying is that every experience in life, that's when we say that when we move up to the soul level, what we are basically doing is we're saying, God, whether you give me happiness, whether you give me sadness, I'm okay. What am I doing then? I am just learning the experience. What happens is that there will come a time when you may still be yelling at somebody, okay, because you need to yell at them, because they need yelling, because they're just that kind of person where they don't understand unless you yell at them. But when you're yelling at them inside, you're very calm. Okay. So it happens to me sometimes, not all the time, sometimes. It happens to me where I've said something, let's say to somebody, which is harsh, but I'm saying it because I know it's harsh. I know because they're not going to understand unless I yell or use a couple of, couple of words that may or may not be appropriate. But at the same time, I'm aware that I am myself calm, that I'm not angry from inside. That the reason why I'm doing this is because it's the right thing to do under the circumstances. Now, as Master Choa would say, why are we talking about this? Because that's what Krishna tells Arjuna to do again and again and again in the Bhagwad Gita. Do your duty, whatever it is. You just have to get at that. You have to do your job. Okay, and you have to do it with what? With Krishna consciousness. So when we are able to be calm inside, not always, but sometimes. And again, Arhatic yoga helps us to make that progression. Like slowly, slowly, we understand how to actually do it. So it's an experience. You kind of grow into it. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's just something that we grow into. Okay, so going back to the chakras. So if it's something related to the earth, then the Shahadev chakra is involved. If it's something related to sexuality, reproduction, the power of adherence, then the Swadhisthana chakra or the sex chakra is involved. If it is related to the fire element or self-control, Arjuna is involved. If it's the Anhat chakra or the air element, then Bhim is involved. If it's the throat chakra, then it's Yudhishthira, right? Also, we need to keep in mind that as we grow, the chakral energy also changes. So right now, the Mooladhara chakra is the earth element, but as we grow to a higher and higher level, these chakras also begin to grow with us. Now that we'll have to talk about, it's a completely different topic. Okay, so why are we talking about this? We're talking about this because every night, what we would like, or every morning, what we would like is that we should sit down and just take a few seconds, think of everything that we did today. What did my Pandavas, what did my Kauravas, and they're all mine, okay? Because remember, Dhritarashtra says, Mamakim Pandavascheva. My vices, my Kauravas, and my Pandavas, they're both mine only. They're not from somewhere else, they're mine, okay? Who won today's battle? So you just need to think of, this is what I do. I just think of like some things that are good about me, something that I did right, and there's something that I could have been better, right? So I just think, okay, next time I'm going to do it this way. I'm not going to do it that way, right? Okay. So my spiritual faculties, my temptations, my inclinations, my good habits and my bad habits, what did they do today? Okay, so how do we do this? Because you're like, okay, how do we do this? So this is something called inner reflection. This is a tool that is taught to us in Arhatic yoga. So we'll just talk about it in brief to the extent that we are permitted to talk about it, or at least what I understand we are permitted to talk about. So this is the yin and yang symbol of the, okay, it's the yin and yang symbol. Now, if you see in the black, there is a dot of white, and in the white, there is a dot of black. And that's why it's also something that always continues. Okay, it's a cycle of evolution. Now, if we go to the left side, we are talking about what is the inner reflection between. So let's first talk about the first one, temperance and greed. Okay, so what does that mean? That temperance basically means that we have, as long as we have this physical body, we have to work, we have to earn a living, right? And greed is when it goes out of control, right? So if it's like we're just destroying our health, destroying our family, spending too much time working, so that's greed. Okay, then between self-control and lust, so it's okay to indulge, but are we just getting overbearing in that? Okay, then there is the honest desire for money, or is it a craving for gold? So is it like I'm constantly thinking about money, or do I just work enough to get enough money to feed myself, my family, take care of whatever I need to take care of? Then it's between forgiveness and anger, between joy and grief, between moroseness and pleasantness, between kindness and cruelty, between selfishness and selflessness. Okay, so there's just some ideas for us to think of how to go about doing this. So why again the Bhagwad Gita? Now the Bhagwad Gita is the essence of 4 Vedas, 108 Upanishads, 6 systems of Hindu philosophy, 700 concise verses summarized in the first shloka and the last shloka. Okay, so the first shloka, as I mentioned earlier, is Dhritarashtra asks his blind mind I'm sorry, Sanjay, sorry, Dhritarashtra asks his introspection, Sanjay, what did my 100 Kauravas and my 5 Pandavas, what did they do today? Okay, so if you're thinking, okay, I'll do this tomorrow. No, do it every day. Every day, let's think of how these instruments are affecting us. What is going to happen? Why are we doing all of this? Why are we doing all this? Because we want the Krishna consciousness to flow through us. We want to be that flute through which the Krishna consciousness flows. When the Krishna consciousness flows, the sound that comes out, even if it's a sad song, even if it's a happy song, right? The sound that comes out of the chakras should be what is called joyful or should be melodious. So even in our grief or in our sadness, we're still melodious. We're not harsh and discordant. So, to me, and again, of course, there are pictures of the flute. There are 5 holes, there are 7 holes, there are 9 holes, there are 11 holes. And I'm sure there are more with like many more holes. What does that mean? The holes basically refer to the chakras. Now in pranic healing, we talk about 11 chakras, but that doesn't mean that there aren't more. There are, we do talk about more chakras at the Arhatic level. And probably there are a lot more which have not been revealed to me personally yet. But what's the purpose? The purpose again is to basically have the Krishna consciousness flowing through us, the 5 Pandavas, the 100 Kauravas. What did they do? Okay. Now, in the next session, we'll be talking about the story of Dron, Drupad, Drishtadum, and Duryodhan. How this interaction happens. Because if you remember, we talked about the second shloka, which is basically Duryodhan walks up to his guru, who, by the way, is also the guru of the Pandavas. Remember that. So he's the guru of the Pandavas as well as he's the guru of the Kauravas. So the question is, why does he side with the Kauravas first? Isn't that interesting to know? Yeah. Okay. So we'll talk about that in the next session. So for now, this is where we are. We want to be that flute. We want to practice inner reflection. How are we going to do it? And why is it again blind mind? The reason why it's the blind mind is because, sometimes when we're doing things, we are not aware. But later on, in the privacy of our own home, in the privacy of our own bedroom, or whatever it is, we can be honest with ourselves, because this is not to share with anybody else. This is just for ourselves. Like, did I not? And if you're not sure, it's okay. It's fine. No worries. Okay, because we're all learning, we're all growing. Pranic healing and Arhatic yoga helps because we clean the chakras, we make the chakras more powerful. There are so many times we are told, don't get angry. And then you're sitting there going, but this person really irritates me. How can I not get angry? How not to get angry, how to control that anger is what we call a series of techniques. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about this for a few seconds. So, I have this phone. Now, if I press the green button on this phone, then it's going to dial a number, right? And if I press the red button, it's going to disconnect, correct? Now, if I give you my phone and I say, somebody make a call with my phone, is it going to work the same way? Yes, right? A red button is going to disconnect the call and a green button is going to connect the call. So this is what we call technology. Technology basically means it will work for whoever uses it. So that's one of the beauties of pranic healing, is that, yes, there are lots of books written on spirituality. There are, so many books. All the scriptures actually contain technology also. But, Master Choa has made it so simple for people like us to just understand what it is and to implement it and to use it in a systematic manner to help us to grow. Okay. So spiritual technology is what pranic healing is about, and Arhatic yoga. And it is the process of rising up to that level where we can let the Krishna consciousness flow through this body and still be happy about it. Not happy exactly, but joyous, because that is the quality of the higher, of a higher level. Happiness is one thing. Joy is a completely different thing. And bliss is the quality of the causal body or the Krishna consciousness. So that's where we want to be. No matter what happens, we're blissful. Okay. So let's be aware of our heart. Let's be aware of our crown. Let's be aware of all our chakras. Let us be aware of the Nakul and Shahadev chakras, which is the sex chakra and the basic chakras. Let's be aware of the Arjuna chakra, which is the Manipur chakra, the solar plexus chakra in the middle of our torso. Let us bless the Bhim chakra, which is the heart, from the back heart. Let us bless the throat chakra, which is the Yudhishthira chakra. Let's also bless our entire planet, our home, our workplace. Let's also be aware of the Krishna consciousness that flows down through us from our crown chakra, enters our body, and it is this divine energy that plays us like a flute. Let us be aware of how far we are ready to be a flute, and that we will slowly and gradually become more and more aware of the divine energy flowing through us. Let us bless everything that we want to bless: our home, our families, the whole planet Earth, the COVID-19 affected people. Let's bless everyone. It is the divine energy that is flowing through us. We are going to bless the earth and everyone and everything. Inhale slowly, and as you exhale, visualize the energy, pink, beautiful, wonderful energy flowing out of our hands to the entire planet, to us, to our chakras, to our bodies. So one more thing that I thought was kind of important to mention here is that we are all aware that God is within us. We've heard of this. We also are, it's like, if God can do it, then why does all this need to happen? Now, of course, I don't have all the answers, but one of the things that I find very interesting is that there is something called free will and there is something called destiny. Now, free will basically means that we as a human being, have the ability to choose. So we may choose to let the consciousness flow through us, or we may choose not to, right? But the more willing we are to let the consciousness flow, the more and more are the chances that we will experience what is called joy. Joy is the ability to feel, it's a quality. So, once you feel joy, I think you will know. And it's like an irreplaceable, undescribable kind of feeling. And it's not exactly happiness, it's a lot beyond that. And bliss is something whereby it's sadness and happiness combined together, where you don't know whether you're happy or you're sad. In fact, it's not even at that level. It's just a different feeling. So I think once we get there, we'll feel it. I think I may have felt it once or twice, but not for very long. Okay. But that's just me. That doesn't mean that you haven't felt it. So if you feel the bliss when you do the meditation, or you are blessing, then you know that that consciousness is flowing through us. And that's the objective, is to get the consciousness, the Krishna consciousness, to flow through us. Like we said, it's, are we resisting the Krishna consciousness flowing through us, or are we open to it? And if we want it to flow through us, then there are certain techniques that we can use, both of which are actually provided in the Bhagwad Gita, but it's like in so many layers, that I feel that without the understanding with Master Choa's energy teachings, I don't think I would have understood the Bhagwad Gita to the extent that I do today. Okay. That doesn't mean I understand it all. It just means I'm learning and I'm growing, and I'm happy to share that with you. Okay. So there is a question that one of them, Nakul or Shahadev, was clairvoyant, and how does that relate to the lower chakras? So clairvoyance is definitely an ability of the higher chakras, but as we grow, what happens is, this is my understanding, is that we begin to feel through our entire body. Not just through our senses, but through our entire body and mind, and the intuition becomes very powerful. So I'm not really sure how to exactly connect it to Nakul and Shahadev, but my sense would be that it's basically an ability that develops over time. So clairvoyance is the ability to perceive. And I don't have a very clear answer for this, but I'm aware that one of them was very intuitive. So I feel it's because the chakras become more intuitive. Like for example, we know some businessmen, for example, they have a very good intuition when it comes to a business deal. Or there are people who can look at certain other people and determine whether these people will make a good partnership or not. And going up. So clairvoyance is not a limited ability. Clairvoyance is an ability that grows, and there are so many layers. There are so many layers that one interpretation is kind of not doing justice, honestly, to the human body, or to the Bhagwad Gita, or to the teachings of Master Choa. This is just one interpretation. It's a book study. The idea is to kind of spark that interest in all of us to study a little bit more, to share, to understand, and to grow together. So, okay. And I think that's it for today. Yeah, some people were asking what are the 10 propensities. So it's the five instruments of perception, five instruments of action, multiplied by their 10 propensities makes the 100 Kauravas. Now that's what the Bhagavad Gita is about, is how those 100 propensities are overcome by the five Pandavas. So we'll be discussing them in order. We'll be discussing some of the important Kauravas. We'll be discussing some important people in, or rather entities in the Kaurav army and in the Pandav army, and how they engage with each other. So that's what the story is about. I can't cover all of that in 15 minutes. Yeah, thank you. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.